Okay, just give it 2 seconds. We're live, but I just need to double check. You can start with the introductions, please.
Okay, welcome to Anything and Everything with Reason, podcast number 2. And as you can see, we are changing our format slightly in our streaming technologies. So this is a new technology for us, so we'll see how this goes. So you're here with your host, Riordan,
Hello.
and me, Andrew.
Excellent. So,
Okay, Riordan.
anything in the news today, recently, that you've been interested in?
Well, actually, I was looking at another study on, in this case, not so much quantum tunneling, but quantum entanglement has been a new way to test the quantum entanglement and shows
Something broke. Sorry, yeah, keep going.
showing it's done at the University of I'm trying to remember, Brisbane or Melbourne. It's showing a new test they can actually prove via test data that quantum entanglement, that's where two particles become entangled. So when one changes one direction, the other one changes the direction at the same time. And when one moves up, the other one moves up. When one moves down, the other one moves down. They become entangled, essentially become twinned and paired to each other. And it happens over a distance that, of course, defies the speed of light. So it actually goes, the entanglement, when you send the signal, transmits faster than the speed of light. They've done this by using an intermediary step to measure what the actual time difference should be if it was by using a third point. So by sending the signal to a middle step and then from a middle step and taking into account delays the signals and processing, because they're able to actually measure the delays fairly accurately. By measuring it over a distance, they can see how long it actually should take for a change in the signal to travel over that particular distance, and it should take X seconds. So if it should take 1 second, they're finding with the entangled particle is doing it in half a second. So it's getting the signal to change its direction at a lot less time. Now, it's not exactly half a second, of course, but that just shows an example. So they're now able to prove quantum entanglement theory that when you get entangled particles, yes, they can transmit their information faster than the speed of light. Although it actually is not actually traveling at faster speed of light. All it is doing, once again, is tunneling or jumping the distance.
Yeah. So, over what kind of distances? Because I'm assuming this would be impractical over large distances.
Yeah, they're only doing it over, I think, a kilometre distance. The dream of having a quantumly entangled particle internet over large distances is just that. It's a dream. The problem with quantum entangled particles is that the particle does not stay entangled forever. It loses its entanglement. You can do it over large distances, but the problem is by the time to transmit the particle over that distance and get it to where you want it to go, it may lose its entanglement. It does not stay permanently entangled. So when you get the two electrons next to each other, or you can do it with photons as well, and you get them entangled and get them to hold that entanglement, so what one does, the other one does, it only stays entangled for a short period of time. So they can slow the particle down to make the entanglement last longer, but even then, I think the longest they've had is a few minutes. So,
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so we're not going to have long-distance telecommunications with quantum entangled particles in the near future. And to re-entangle the particle, you've got to bring them right back next to each other. So it sort of defeats the idea of doing that in the first place.
I think that it would even be, like, from the sounds of that, it would be much more plausible and much more realistic to look into more reliable methods of tunneling. Not necessarily tunneling, but spatial tunneling. Like, we're talking about things like, relativistic concepts and whether or not we want to have...
Yeah, it's just a way of proving these concepts.
Proving that they actually are something.
Concepts actually do exist. In this case, Einstein was right.
There's some other mechanism behind the scenes that we don't know of.
Yeah. And once again, Einstein's mathematics stands up to the test, and his theorems stand up to the test. And there's case, yeah, it's now, you could really say it's a theory, not just a supposition, because we're starting to show proof that speaky action at a distance, as he called it, works quicker than the speed of light. It's instantaneous, essentially. So it would be great if we could do entanglement as a permanent means for communication, but it may not be something that's going to happen in the future. What it can be used for, though, is quantum entanglement for encryption and unbreakable encryption. Because you break the entanglement, you don't get to break the encryption. The thing stays encrypted, and what happens is the connection gets lost. So then you have to re-entangle new particles. And the way they transmit them usually is via fiber optic cables, the best way to send them. So you can then have an unbreakable communication system. So if we have small nodes over small distances, and one particle then links to another particle, then there's an intermediary amplifier that links to another particle, etc., etc. In the near future, we'll have an unbreakable communication line. Till then, the fastest options we got are, of course, fiber optics. So photonics happens to be the fastest, and once again we're restricted to the speed of light, or the near speed of light, which electrons of course themselves travel at as well. So for the near future, instant communications aren't going to happen. So yes, you think, oh great, wouldn't it be great, we could send a satellite out to the outer edge of the solar system and get the data back straight away. Not going to happen. Nice idea. Leave it for the science fiction writers to keep coming up with those ones, and heavily on the fiction part there, by the way.
Weird.
Okay.
The one thing I got is in regards to which I think is actually, it's important to me, because obviously I've had to deal with medicating and stuff like that over years and so on and so forth. But it's recently they did a test with some drugs in regards to like depressive system drugs, particularly serotonin reuptake inhibitors, the selective ones. Yes. I'm just having to look through my notes about which drug it is. It's sertraline, which is a type of SSRI. I'm on SRI. I've been on SRIs before, and so on and so forth. They're pretty common drugs. But the thing, the issue that's being found now, and they've been testing this up with chimpanzees specifically, which is whether or not a
lot of depressed chimps.
Yeah, the issue of medicating people with these drugs, because a lot of SRIs are used for other things as well. So they're not just necessarily used for depressed individuals, and sometimes they're used for other things. But the problem being that there's a part of the brain, it's called the anterior cingulate cortex, and it's a lot to do with motivational directives, stuff like that, to do with emotions, so on and so forth. And generally to do with tasks, doing things. So generally a lot of it's to do with motivation, hence a lot of people that are depressed don't want to do things, and so on and so forth.
And also the same has effect on procrastinators. Scientists have recently just done a study and found out why procrastinators procrastinate. So this also would have an effect, yes, definitely.
The issue is, though, because these drugs are being given to people that aren't depressed, when you give these drugs to people that are depressed, there's actually a growth in that region of the brain, the volume increases, which is obviously a good thing. We want that with people that are depressed. But non-depressed individuals had a negative impact on the volume of that part of the brain, and also showed shrinking of the hippocampus region, which is extremely, we don't want this. You know, it has a lot of issues to do with memory and so forth. I mean, the hippocampus is, because it's a lower part of the brain.
Memory, also, body regulation of body functions, metabolic rates. Yes.
And so it's an interesting issue of that. We need to understand exactly how the mechanisms for these medications. We don't know a lot of the mechanisms that these work within. It's like at the moment, some of these things are like the tricyclics and so on and so forth. We're just kind of like, well, it seems to work this way. We think this is what the actual method of action is. But
same with anesthesia.
We
really don't quite know. There are several theories. It could be something to do with ion exchange between certain cells.
I think it's a combination of many, many different things. It's such a complex issue.
Yeah. We don't know how they work, but we do know that they do work with anesthetics, and it is with some of the some of the drugs that we give for depression and other mental illnesses. We have an idea of how they work in some people, I should say, and to what effects some of the effects will be. Because they're a blanket drug, we can only understand a small percentage of how that actually works. Yes, that is definitely true. But the fact that some of them do work is quite amazing.
Yeah, I mean it's extremely important. I mean I've been doing research into lots of things lately to do with mental
Mm,
cognition, specifically with the blood-brain barrier and how there's a change
mm,
within the blood and how that can actually go into the metabolic, like how you can get metabolic key ingredients for metabolization into the brain, and
mm,
how what the concentrations are. But also the issues that are related to some of these things, like not being able to get glucose transporter proteins to be able to take that to the brain, can cause severe issues with people and their mental cognition, whether or not they have enough energy, so on and so forth. And it just there are
mm.
some of these little issues that you just don't pick up, and they're just so it's just a failure of the mechanisms of the body to be able to actually do these things. And some of them are molecular, some of them are more macroscopic, some of them it's so complex that there's so
We
many
are
different answers.
advancing definitely in those fields. I mean, particularly in psychotropic drugs in the last 20 years, it's been leaps and bounds and steps. I still remember when Prozac was introduced to the market and the major impact it had on the mental health sector and improving people's state of mind. It was a big leap. And now when we look back at it, it's still an effective drug, but we see how much further we've come from there. And then when you look back prior to that, the wonderkin at one stage was Valium, to use the brand name, which was an effective and still is an effective in some people in some instances an effective
It, it was
tool
like
stabilizer.
that talk we were
So
having about Paul Ergos and amphetamines. Some drugs are effective on certain people, and some they're not. Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, we are coming leaps and bounds, and we, as science probes it further, we get a better understanding. We get to better tailor the drug regime to suit a particular patient's needs. So we're definitely not going backwards, or as some people would say, things have gotten worse. Quite the opposite. You find that yeah, mental health does improve, but yes, like any other science, it takes time. And the reason why it takes time is you have to test and test and test to make sure that you have the least amount of side effects, and also hopefully you can understand exactly what's going on with the drug in its effects as well as its side effects. These things take time, but we've definitely come a lot further than we have in the last 100 years. You think back to where it was 100 years ago when they were using cold ice baths and shock therapy, well, which essentially did work because they shocked a person into such a state that they were
Well,
shocked out of their stupor,
it's just
which
this.
they promptly fell back into not long after.
It's the same as lobotomies. It's a solution. Like, it's just
It's
not the
not the
right
right
solution.
solution, but
Yeah. Eric,
yeah,
and your next
with
story.
electroconvulsive therapy, which is now done in a much more humane way, done under sedation, actually does work in some cases of depression and mental illness. But we've come a long way. We're not stuck with two tools to do the job now. We
Oh
have
yeah.
a variety of tools and combinations, and we're getting more and more every day. And with different tools, even when we come to non-drug therapies like what's the word I'm looking for? With cognitive behavioural therapies, they've even improved in their understanding of those. So, yeah, it is the fact that science does take time because it likes to get things right and it likes to correct itself. And people complain, well, oh, you got that wrong. Yes, but now we've got it right.
It takes time. It's building on the shoulders of giants. Like you gotta.
Yes,
It's it's
and
not
it's
just one
incremental steps.
solution. It's a multi-step to get to a point. It doesn't work that way. It's like saying that people should have guns straight away. No, you work from the most basic weapons and you go further and further and better and better and better. It's not. It's not. It doesn't work that way. It's a sledgehammer of brute forcing it. But anyway, on to the next story. You got one? Otherwise, we'll stay
I
forever on
shall.
this one.
bit lacking in stories to do with science this week.
Oh, I've got more. We want to continue on. I've got tons more.
Mainly because I've been inundated with political feeds in
Oh,
my
okay. Yep, yep.
Twitter
Let's go
stream.
political, and then we'll go to another one that's science.
Okay, yes, mainly to do with the questions of refugees, and people go, "Oh, yes, that's one thing you don't really want to touch upon," mainly because it's such a hotly contested area.
I
Put
was gonna say a
simply.
horrible joke that there's enough touching anyway. Um,
Yeah, put simply, people say about, oh, we can't take any more refugees when in fact we can. Um, yes, it strains the resources, but the thing is, with more people, you build more resources. More people make more resources. Um, yeah, the land itself can only take so much, but at the moment, we're not yet at capacity. And the funny thing is, this is a country which is built on refugees, people fleeing other countries. In fact, that's how it started. Um,
I,
except for the original inhabitants, they weren't refugees. They came here and inhabited the place peacefully, which is what we should have been doing in the first place. We are in a situation where we have the choice to help the refugees and to be humane and stop their plight. And hopefully, politically, we are in the situation, if the right decisions are made, to stop causing the refugee situation in the first place, which is by perpetuating wars and conflicts in other countries. Um,
I'm just gonna.
Somebody simply put,
Yep.
we have a prime minister that wants to bomb Syria, creating more refugees in Syria, and then not accepting those refugees, which we have then created.
That's all right. Germany's
So,
taking them all on anyway. Um,
yes, we,
I'm
yes,
sorry.
I, yeah, and when you look at the numbers of money, you look at the numbers compared with the numbers of refugees and compare that with the money spent to isolate them, keep them out of Australia, to put them onto places like Manus Island in Australia's case, and put them in place and like the Papua New Guinea, the amount of money spent there could be better spent integrating the people into Australia at a far less cost and actually generate income and goodwill for this country. So it's a bit of a mute point when you were spending, was it $1.3 million a day to lock someone up, as opposed we could have spent, $1.3 million a week housing them in this country and helping them generate new
I
jobs.
think people are very scared of. Like I agree. I agree. If someone's seeking asylum, it should be a natural, basic human right to be able to seek asylum somewhere.
It is under the UN
Um,
Charter.
but
Yeah.
I mean, I'm also very cynical. So I agree with you. I definitely agree, and I think that a country like Australia,
Mm.
we definitely need more immigration than what we have at the moment because we require it to. I mean, look, we're a country
If
with
they're worried
vast.
about processing and making sure they're genuine refugees, we should have agents on the ground in those countries that the people themselves can go to. But we don't. They
No,
can't go to their own government and say, I want to get refugee status in this other country, because if they do, chances are they'll be killed. Disappeared is what has happened in the past and is continuing to happen now. So these are people who are fleeing war. They're fleeing getting shot, getting hacked apart with machetes.
I,
So
I think that at
it's a
this.
genuine need. So and if the country says, well, if we need to process them first, well, put people from Australia, from the immigration department in those countries so they can be processed. There is nowhere they can go to get processed in those countries. And if we do want to process them, we'll do it there. So then the ones who are genuine can come here.
Yeah,
Uh,
I
and I
agree
think
with
you'll
that.
find most of them are genuine.
I agree with that
So
to an extent, but like I said, I'm also very cynical. I think that look from a survival point of view, I look for more from an economical point of view. I agree, immigration is a very good thing. I agree that asylum seekers should be allowed to come here. I mean, it's an obvious fact that we need filtration because there are some people we don't want to come to this country. Like that's obvious.
Yeah, but they're very few and far between.
They
I
are
mean,
pretty
people
few
say,
and
oh,
far
you'll be
between.
letting in terrorists. But let me guess. I'll put this to you logically. If you want to invade a country and cause terrorism in that country, would you want to hop on a boat that's more than likely going to be turned back? Chances are you'll die on the way. Or would you put your terrorist on a plane, fly him in on a visa, straight through immigration, and have him there in a few hours? Which would you do?
Yeah, I think that the more
Exactly.
obviously we'd want
So
obviously
no,
you'd
they're not
put them through
sending
there
in
in a way that's
terrorists.
less conspicuous.
They are the people who are fleeing from the terrorists.
We also need to take into account the macroscopic part of it, which is the more of the cultural aspect part. Why is that focusing on that is really annoying. But we need to focus on the more macroscopic picture as well, because there's other things to include.
Well,
Which
when you
is
talk about the culture, Australia is not a monoculture.
no, it's
a
supposed to be a melting
multiculture.
pot, apparently.
It's not. Well, it's more like a canvas with many different colours. It makes it far more interesting. The foods that you eat are, I would say now, far improved from when I was a child, when two meat and veg, although not my family, we were eating Chinese before Chinese was popular, Italian before Italian was popular in Western culture. Even Indonesian before Indonesian was popular in Western
If
culture.
the food's not neon, it's not allowed in the house. It needs to
Yeah,
be more
basically, yes.
preservatives.
Our foods have improved dramatically. Our cultural outlook has improved dramatically. We have better entertainment. We have better connection to different cultural understandings by having a multicultural society. We are not a bland white sheet of paper. We're a sheet of paper
I
that has
think
many
that
different colors on it, and that is far more interesting and more fulfilling in
I
life.
I I agree,
Have, yes, a
but
monoculture.
I also do feel like that there is an issue. Like I'm not taking either. Oh, I'm more towards the accepting side, because I believe most people are pretty reasonable. The issue is
Most people are. Some people aren't, but it's going to get that in
most
any
people are
culture, no
pretty
matter
okay.
what. And you
The
can't brand a culture by one or two people.
No,
Otherwise, we'd say all white people are bad. Look what a whitey has done in the past. Yes, white people have been bad, but not all white people are bad.
I would
It's like,
definitely say that a culture that you're brought up in, though, will actually influence your cognition, your ability to make decisions, the outcomes, and the more likely outcomes of your decision making. And the problem is that some of these people are coming from culture. Like I said, it's not always this case. For example, look at Iran in the 70s, the 50s. They're completely different to what they were now. They were a lot better there than what they are now, even.
we had people coming over here from war-torn Vietnam, and when there were people that's all they've known for years, for 10 years, that have been in war, and yet they're fine. They're in our society. They're contributing. They're the people that own businesses and banks and work as teachers and future doctors. So that person coming over on the boat could be the person that saves your life. They could be
Yeah.
the next doctor that's going to save your life. They could be the next banker that's going to give you a loan. They could be the next person that's working next to you on your job site, helping you. So when it comes to saying, because of the way they've been brought up, they think differently. Yes, so what? They think differently. Different perspectives are what allow us to expand as a human race. But if you had a singular perspective and a singular direction, we wouldn't branch off the path. We would make no new discoveries, and we wouldn't advance.
The problem is, I
So
think that
it's the differences that make it good.
there needs to be more research and more analysis into the capability for reprogramming of people when they come from a country where they
They
have
don't
been.
need to be reprogrammed. They
If
don't need to be assimilated.
Well, they don't need to be assimilated.
Yes, you need to have an understanding of the basic culture, but
The problem is there are a lot of cultures where there is high, problems with just in normal, general, everyday people. These people that will come here, that actually there's high rates of domestic violence against women. I'm not saying that that's the people
that's
that
what
they
they'll
are.
unlearn when they come here, when they realise,
Yeah.
although you couldn't use the same argument, there are high rates of domestic violence amongst white people.
Oh
and
yeah,
people who are
definitely.
brought in this country. So yeah, domestic violence
there
is
needs
another
to be
issue altogether that needs to be addressed, and it's not to do with yes, it is to do with culture, but it's also to do with the local culture, and I think that's another issue
Yeah.
also we have here. But It's not something that's imported. They're not importing their problems. They're importing their potentiality.
Yeah.
Yes, problems come with people when they bring them, but if you have a supportive, understanding environment, which they previously didn't have, the problems in the long run diminish.
I think that most.
Like I said, the perfect
Yeah.
example is, in the past when, we did let people in from Iraq in large amounts, large groups. No, they didn't wipe out the country. There hasn't been a Muslim overrunning Islamic jihadists destroying the cities as yet.
There's
Haven't
more.
seen
There's
it.
more of an
No.
issue.
No, it doesn't happen that way. I mean, I myself don't support Islam.
I don't support
I
any
do
religion.
support people that practice Islam. There's a difference. I support the people that practice it. I don't support the religion itself, same as I don't support Christianity, but I support the people that practice it. As you may have your religious beliefs as long as you don't force them upon me or anyone else. You are yes, you can be able to
I think
believe
there's
that,
more
even if
of.
I don't believe in it. When it comes to different cultures, it's what Australia is. Australia is different cultures. We are not one culture. We are many cultures, and we always have been many cultures. And for such a long time, that's what has made Australia such a great place.
There's more of an
It's
issue.
a very few people, the minority, that push the view that we're a monoculture. And the book, The Lucky Country, people take that the wrong way. The book wasn't written as a critique to say how fantastic and wonderful we are. It was a critique to say what a bunch of bloody idiots we are for taking for granted what we have and not for sharing it with others. The term "the lucky country" was an essay in sarcasm in that respect, but it was an intelligent comment on about how we as Australians have become culturally lazy, and in our position in the world have become lazy in our response to other people's needs. We are a country that needs to share what we have. To do so is to be the kid in the playground that wants to hang on to his toys and not let anyone else touch it. Once you become that isolated, eventually you start losing friends. And we're at that point where we're rapidly losing friends around the world.
The thing is, I could agree with that in some ways. And like I said, I don't think that Australia wants to become a stagnated culture in regards to that we don't want to... Culture is going to always develop, but I disagree in stating that isolation loses you any kind of thing. Because, I mean, Japan is a good example. Below 1% population that's not of the same... Of that country, yet they have one of the lowest crime rates. I'm not saying that's the part, but I'm just saying that it's not the case that if you do that you won't end up that way. But they have very good relations with all of the countries because they're active in that. But you don't have to have internal. I definitely.
They themselves also have problems because of their isolationism. Originally, they weren't a monoculture; they were a multicultural society. Japan, only in the last 400 years, has become monocultured.
Yeah, they close themselves off
under
from
force.
outsiders.
Yeah, they close themselves off and they force themselves into that. They still have some issues with the monocultural approach.
I don't
they
agree
have
with
the same
it,
level. Looking at podcasts from other people who live in Japan and from the Japanese themselves, saying, yeah, they do have the same issues that we are going through at the moment, that they've actually been through because of their isolation, and that it has caused economic stagnation, has caused cultural stagnation, and they've had problems with racism and
they do have some problems with racism.
Yeah,
yes.
It's like Australia. It's Australia. We call it casual racism. Over there, they call it understated racism or extra politeness.
Though, admittedly, though, from people I've talked to, I mean, I have a good friend at work that goes to Japan. That's where he comes from. That's obviously his nationality. He says it's also there's some kind of racism to it, but it's not the same as like what we would consider a racist. Like that person's bad because they're this. It's more kind of just like
it's classic xenophobia.
It's not really. It's kind of like xenophobia. Yeah.
You're not in on the in jokes in this. You're not in the in joke, which is you're not part of the in crowd. You're always going to be on the outer, which is very much the way Australia. That's what we call casual racism. A lot of Australians are unfortunately like that. Oh, you're always going to be on the outer. You're always going to be that Vietnamese person. But I was born here. My parents are Vietnamese. Yeah, but you're that Vietnamese person. Where are you from? from Cabramatta. No, I mean originally. Oh, yeah, up the road at Cabramatta. That's
Yeah.
what it's like.
Yeah.
No, they are Australian. Uh, when you go to a place like Thailand, where the Chinese have been there for so long, they're no longer considered Chinese. They're Thai. If you're a native-born Thai, you're a Thai. If you're a Chinese-born Thai, you're Thai. They've got over that discrimination. They've got over that distinction.
I
And
do.
it's
I do think that a
something
large.
that we are heading towards, but we're not quite there yet. And that carries over to the immigration and asylum seeker debate. It's the others, and then there's us. When we got to realize it's all us. When you get down to when people talk about race, there is only one race, the human race, and then there's the animals have their own particular race. There's only one race. Genetically, we are all the same. So
I think
it's
that
culture. It's a cultural barriers. Yes, there are barriers, but there are also barriers that can be broken down.
I agree with that in regards to that. I do think that it's a relatively small part of the population that is that bad. Most people I talk to, generally, they get along with mostly anyone. I mean, I have noticed that there is some racism amongst certain groups. But I also, and I agree with you in regards to that we're so closely related, the differences are very minuscule, but I don't like labeling things in a way that makes it impossible for us to categorize, because I think the genetic differences between people are extremely important, especially in medicine, and we have to be aware that there are genetic differences between races, and that it's actually...
No, when you come down to genetically, we are one race. To have a separate race would mean that you could
We're
not
all the same
interbreed.
species.
That's right.
Is the
We are the
important
same
part.
species. We are the same race. The genetic differences are brought about by manifestations of random chance due to
Well, there is
areas we have to
some.
live in.
There was
And
some.
those,
There was some
yeah,
separation, though. Like, I mean, there's noticeable separation in regards to that. There are some diseases that are only within certain subsets because they have
which
the...
happen to
Yeah.
belong to the regions that they live in, which goes to show, yes, those diseases are a result of the areas, which result of genetic variations which come about from the classic survival of the fittest. Perfect example is sickle cell.
Sickle cell anemia, yeah.
Sickle cell anemia, which makes it harder for the malaria bug to cause damage and take hold in people who have sickle cell. Now, that's particularly mainly to particular regions in one area of Africa, and it continues to get passed on because it offers a genetic advantage. So,
it stops them
when you
from
come
getting...
down to the rest of the person's genome, their genome is the same as mine, and I don't have the sickle cell anemia because I was not from that area.
Well, your genomes won't be exactly the same, but there'll be a slight deviation,
there
but it's
would be
extremely small.
very slight difference, but yeah, we are the same race.
You can interbreed. If you can interbreed, you're the same species.
Yeah, we can interbreed. They're cosmetic, and the big differences are cultural. So when it comes down to race, what we're really talking about is culture, and culture can mean art, it can mean a way of thinking, it can mean a language, and it can mean a religion. I mean, religions, once again, are particular to the area you happen to be brought up in. So...
The issue I find though with talking about this stuff is that people have a propensity to go towards, okay, I am going to hold the politically correct view, and as someone that's extremely interested in objectional truths and logic and reasoning, I don't hold that view at all. I'm more than willing...
go based on the evidence, and the evidence shows
I'm more than willing to talk
we're one species. So yeah,
we're definitely one species, but it's
one race, and the race, the cleanest definition is if it's a separate race, if it can't interbreed. If it can interbreed, then it's the one race, and
the problem is that there is no clear definition of race or species, even species. I think that the best definition
actually, there are clear definitions, but the problem is there's many clear definitions.
Yes.
And
I would say that there would be...
In this case, I'd apply Occam's razor to it. Once you take away all the fat and all the hoo-ha and come down to the simplest, most reasonable, reasoned explanation is probably the right one. So
I think that the processing of genomes of certain individuals is extremely important in regards to geographical location and origin, because if you don't take the problem is this: I agree in regards to that we're all same species, but if we disregard, okay, the notion of race isn't probably the best idea. I think that probably there needs to be some labeling system. There
types.
needs to be
Probably the best way of putting it is types, regional types.
Yeah, regional types.
Which we do have.
It's really important because for medicine, especially.
Yeah, particular regional types would give you confer a high level of melanin in some areas, which
it actually cross maps with the UV maps, UVB radiation maps.
Exactly. And like my particular type originally comes from colder climates and where there were lower levels of sunlight, so therefore we need to have less melanin so we could actually synthesize more vitamin D. Yeah. So, there are genetic differences, but these are regional and minor. Yet they are significant when it comes to medical issues, but really when you're talking about cultural issues, minor. We make them. We, as a human construct, make them major.
The problem is more of a cultural, social thing.
But when you look
those are the wrong labels.
That's right.
Those are the wrong labels.
When you get down to the brain, you take away a person's brain, whether it be someone that's a Buddhist, whether it be someone that's a Christian, whether it be someone's an atheist, the brains are pretty much the same. The only differences are that of the individual. The wiring might be slightly different, but the brains are the same. But then again, the wiring between a person next to me who's also an atheist will be slightly different again from mine, but still has the same matter, same components, the same atoms. It's the same. It comes down to a cultural and a thinking difference. So
I would say that there wouldn't be clear evidence to support either side, because the issue is that there's so much of a variance based on
you can't
epigenetics
point to a
and
genetic
genetics.
point in the body and say, there's the gene for Buddhism, there's the gene for atheism, there's the gene for sciences.
They may have a higher propensity
there's the gene for an
though,
artist.
like
there's the musician gene. Doesn't happen that way. So
no.
Yeah, it comes down to our upbringing, our programming, our culture. So
I'd be willing to say that there would
be potential to be anything.
There'd be some amount of genetic some amount of genetics that are allow that person to be more likely to be in this, but I think epigenetics play more of a role and social interaction plays more of a role.
Social and epigenetics have a bigger role, but your base genes, when you look across the board, we're looking at the same thing. So when we come down to the argument in culture that there are different races, we're not. We are the same race. There are regional variations, but we're the same. They're not significant. There's not a whole race of people out there that grow extra arms that can't interbreed with the race that don't have extra arms. That doesn't exist. And even if it did...
Well, the issue is that there's no good mapping of the brain anyway to determine how much of it is genetically determined. And I would assume I mean, obviously with some things, they would be highly genetically determined, and then some things would be less so.
The only thing that they've been able to prove so far that seems to be innate is the capacity for learning, is the capacity for understanding of languages. And it's not so much an innateness as a hard-wired a learning circuit for learning languages. It's about the only innateness that we seem to have. And even that's debatable amongst some specialists.
Probably mathematical would be a very interesting area to prove. Because
mathematical modelling is also
the logical
another area that it's suggested it's quite possible that it's innateness, because there are cultures that don't have written languages and yet still have mathematical modelling, particularly some of the sub-Saharan African cultures. They do have mathematical modelling because they're able to look at star patterns and work out when season changes and when they're going to plant their crops by looking at where the star fields, and they're also able to calculate into the future when they should be planting their crops. And they have mathematical modelling. They can also count, even though they don't have numbers. Some cultures that actually don't have numbers to count still can count.
Yes.
Uh,
Because it's an
yeah,
abstract concept, not necessarily
yeah, and
needing
they're
a
able to
placeholder.
add plus and minus. There are some cultures that don't have division, or older cultures that didn't have division. There are some cultures that didn't have multiplication, which is a very rare thing, because it's almost every culture can add and multiply. But yeah, some concepts didn't exist until, well, they were discovered or invented, as it were. Most in the past by Arab and Greek scholars. So
We'll move on.
yes,
I just wanted to re-clarify what I said before about reprogramming. I meant more as in you take someone from one system and you put them in another, and how long it takes for them to not adapt but change to that system is what I
yeah,
meant.
their core
I
system
didn't
will
mean
change,
like
and
grab
they'll
them
adapt.
and
They'll
fucking
adapt.
torture them or something.
Yeah, I think when we talk about integration, yeah, with other cultures, is you keep your core culture, but you integrate to the rules and the norms of the culture that
I think that
go.
some people might be
Yeah,
have more of a capacity to change than others. Some people might
yeah.
have more
But yeah,
plasticity.
that has got nothing to do with what culture really they're coming from. It's more down to the individual.
No,
And
yeah, I agree.
yeah, because yeah, and the other things, we create new norms. That's the
Yeah, well,
whole thing.
like you don't want to be the man in the freezer, not not
Yeah.
changing. Our culture needs to be progressive. I agree with
Yes,
it.
culture is a progressive. I mean, we don't exchange wives for sheep anymore. We don't
Don't we?
throw our feces out onto the streets anymore. We culturally realize, hang on, that's not a good thing to do
I think
before we
that's more of a
medicalize.
logical thing, isn't it, than a
Yeah, well,
cultural
that
thing?
happened from
It's
cultural
just like they're
shifts.
throwing their shit out. I will throw my
Yeah,
shit out the window
no,
as
it
well.
actually happened from cultural
It's
shifts
the
in London.
popular
I mean,
thing to do.
sewage was moved into pipes because people were finding it rather pleasant, and it was a cultural shift that caused it to change, not a medical shift. So it's amazing how
Some
culture changes, and yeah, culture, different cultural norms change for the better. So if we don't change our cultural norms and we expect them to stay the same, we won't get better,
oh,
and need more input, new inputs to have better norms.
alrighty.
So
What
yep,
will
we should move on from that one.
Sorry, I want to move on to the next one. It's 40 minutes in. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's a whole bunch. Actually, that might be a talk for another damn thing because it's so big.
Yeah, there's definitely lots of evidences and researches, different research on that subject. You could go on for hours, and there's a many faceted topic. Yes.
We have next up a piece of technology that to most electricians won't be anyone that's done anything with electronics might not be super amazing, but I still think it's a really cool use of it, which is they're doing magnetic field wearable device communications, which is effectively
Oh yes, I did see a little bit on the article. I read the headline, but I actually haven't fully read the.
Okay.
Yes,
I'll
local.
tell you the basic gist of what it is, and then you'll know exactly what device it is and what role the person plays in it. So it's two coils that sit on the body and interact with each other. So
So you're
what is
talking
the
about
person in
near-field
this system?
communication. The
We're a
person is the antenna.
transformer. They're using the person to concentrate the magnetic flux. So they're using the coils like a transformer instead of using an air gap to communicate with the magnetism. They're using us.
So we become a conductive transformer, so the magnetic hysteresis, or is it
Yeah.
the case that it's an antenna?
Uh,
Because the
it's using. I think it's more to do with the fact that the body is being used to concentrate. Like so that obviously when you have two coils and you usually have a ferromagnetic material.
actually, with the amount of water in a body, we'd actually act as a conducting antenna.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
We'd work to concentrate because
Yeah,
obviously it's magnetic
you create a
influence.
local flux in one area, so you've got a region, a hysteresis, magnetic field collapses and rises, which then generates radio waves, which are then transmitted via the fluids in the body, because the body is great for transmitting
Yes,
radio waves to the other side.
and so
So
because
basically, yeah, local field network. I love it.
there's two really big benefits to this, and that is because the power to do this is so little comparatively to something like Bluetooth.
Reduced interference as well.
Another thing is, obviously air gap transformers aren't super efficient, so the actual technology dies off pretty close. You can no longer get the you can't really pick up the signal anymore. So the problem with Bluetooth is that obviously it just omnidirectional out into the air.
Yeah.
If
It's
you pick it up
on
and you're capable
everywhere,
of
every
decrypting it,
time.
then
Yes.
you screw around with it. This is
And
just like you have to be pretty damn close. You
secure
could potentially deal with
communications.
it, but I don't know.
Oh, we're going to see a lot of spies shaking hands for a lot longer.
Yeah, or someone sitting on you very close on the bus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why are those two people holding hands? No, they're not holding hands. They're communicating.
Yeah. But I thought that was funny that they were using a person effectively as the core of a
I just
transformer.
realized, oh no, you know what's going to happen? This is going to be the new technology that's going to be rolled out into our NBN.
Don't
Instead
give
of
them credit.
to the
That's
last
too
mile, it'll be
advanced.
people linking hands.
It'd probably get the project done quicker though.
Yes, well, yeah, great news for the unemployed. They can now become part of the network.
Yeah. No, I thought that was funny. Anyway, we'll go on to the next one. A new prion was discovered.
A new prion.
A new prion. It's been 50 years since the last one.
Yeah.
So there's a new one. For people that don't understand what prions are protein structures that are misfolded, and they cause diseases. Generally, a lot of these have been to do with the brain, and they've just found alpha-synuclein, which is one to do with Parkinson's. So they think that a large number of Parkinson's related illness is may potentially be to do with misfolded proteins or prions.
Yes. If everybody wants to know, Parkinson's, for those who most people do know, is a disease that causes uncontrolled shakes. And Parkinson's is not a particular, well, it is a disease, but it's not one particular cause. There are multiple or combinations of causes that cause Parkinson's. Same with Alzheimer's, although there are commonalities in the disease. So, yeah, Parkinson's, it's not one cause. So Parkinson's is a blanket term for the disease. As a result, you get shaking and uncontrolled shakes, and you don't have direct or proper control over the signals which travel down the nerves to move your muscles. So,
and you become like Michael J. Fox. You can't ride skateboards.
yes, walk through. Parkinson's affects your balance, affects your perception, depth perception, amongst other things, as well as muscle control.
It's motor.
There
Mostly
are many
motor neuron,
causes.
isn't it? It's mostly to do with muscle control, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, same with motor neuron, or commonly ALS, or
Yeah.
Lou Gehrig's disease. Motor neuron is now known as ALS. So,
Yeah.
yes. Something I looked into extensively because it runs in my family. So.
Oh,
Yes.
fantastic! Wait, you have an ALS running your family?
Yes. Small chance I may get it. Hopefully not.
So you'll get two diseases. You'll be like birds, and there'll be like all these diseases, but you'll be fine because you have so many that it counteract. It's just balance, perfect balance.
Yes, if you're wondering why we're getting more diseases, no, we're not getting more diseases. We're just getting better at discovering what diseases are already there and then putting names to them and finding out what causes them. Although finding out the cause and the cure, that's always a harder thing. But we're just getting better at doing it. So
Doctors are putting autism in our vaccines.
Yes. No. As to that, yes, vaccines, people do get vaccines. They are safe and they do not cause autism. In fact, it's recently discovered a possible and probable cause is a genetic defect, a particular genome. They found a common genome expression in people with autism. So there you go, folks. It's a genetic cause. Not caused by...
Brought on by vaccines!
It's not brought on by vaccines. It's a genetic defect. Vaccines
by chemtrails! Clouds are just a propaganda.
Yes. Oh, yes. That is one other thing I wanted to talk about very quickly, although the reason why I haven't brought it up before, I'm just going to talk about it as a logical thing at this point, because I haven't... although you can follow up any links via this, is about fluoridation in water and the safety of it. If you want to follow up anything, you can look on Snopes about the myth of fluoridation causing mental health issues or as a control drug. Now, the reason why I say that is fluoride actually occurs naturally in some water supplies. It doesn't have to be added. It is the reason why we add it, to increase dental protection. In areas that there are increased levels of fluoride at a controlled, maintained level, there is a decrease in cavities. This has been shown time and time again over a 50-year period. Now, people say it is a drug which is put in the water to control the population. Well, to that I say, phooey, and logically I'll explain it to you. Why would they put a drug in the water which rich and poor drink equally, which would then affect people of all levels of society? That's not a good way to control a population. If you are the controller, it's going to affect you too. You wouldn't do that. Oh, but they have special filters to take it out of their houses. I've never seen a rich person's house with a special filter to take fluoride out of the water. And in fact...
But that's exactly what they'd want you to think.
Yeah.
They'd want you to... It's just,
yes.
It's a plan.
Scientists and alike will drink fluoridated water. You could give it to them and they would be happy to drink it because they know all it does is help your teeth and your bones.
They're controlling the scientists to make you think that vaccines don't give us autism.
Oh, yes, those billionaire scientists. I'm yet to meet a billionaire scientist. Yes, they have a cabal of billionaire scientists. No. It's the oil barons who are billionaires, but even them, they don't
necessarily
drink the oil either. I don't know any billionaire scientists driving around in their limousines drinking champagne. No, scientists probably making less than your average plumber. And I'm not exaggerating. A lot of them do. They do the science because they love the science. And these are the people that will tell you after study after study after study, which you can look up on Google Scholar. Not Google, because it'll bring up a lot of garbage. Go to Google Scholar. Google Scholar will actually take you to the studies and the peer review, testable, retestable, checked by other people and found to find the same result, that fluoridation of water is safe. Now, high levels of fluoridation are dangerous, but drinking lots of water is dangerous too. The dose makes the poison. Any chemical at a safe level makes at a lower level can be safe. Now, before I'll say it for you. Now, this isn't a natural fallacy. You have, over thousands of years, your body has adapted and made use of fluoride. It is something that your body is naturally adapted. Now, that's not the natural fallacy, because I remember someone saying to me, oh, but lava's natural. Yes, but you don't drink lava. Your body's never had to adapt to drinking lava. But your body has adapted to having fluoride in the water. So your body actually makes use of it. It is something that has naturally occurred. Now, the beauty of the council's putting fluoridation controls in there is they can control the level to a safe level. So if it's too high, they can reduce it. If it's too low, they can bring it up to a safe level. It is good for your teeth. It does not make you any more stupid. My IQ is not less because I've drunk fluoridated water. Neither is my sister, who currently has 4 degrees, as I'm probably, she's doing another 2 degrees at the moment. So, no, it doesn't make you stupider. It does not control the population. And in fact, I'd probably say, as my philosophy lecturer called me, a person who doesn't always follow the rules, because if I disagree with the rule and think it's unjust, I don't follow it. He called me an anarchist. So, no, it does not make you compliant. Fluoridation is safe. Look it up, Google Scholar. Go to Snopes if you want to follow the conspiracy theories. One other point. Conspiracies happen, yes, but a conspiracy is something that has been proved. A conspiracy theory is just that. It is a theory. It has never been proved. Not theory in the scientific sense, but a supposition. All right. When we talk about theories in science, we're talking about something that's based with evidence, and it's more
a hypothesis. A hypothesis
is something that we just, as a guess, which has no evidence to support it.
A theory is something with evidence.
Is a hypothesis that's been proven to be true, to have evidence. It's 99.99% true.
I'd say when we're done with this,
you should... of how the sun revolves, the sun sits still, and we revolve around the sun. We have evidence that proves 99.99% that's true, that the Earth goes around the sun. Therefore, we can see it coming up.
I'm still a believer of the Earth-centric model of the universe.
Yes, but we can disprove that with evidence.
No, it can't. It could just be extremely complex, mate. No, I'm just kidding.
And to quote Christopher Hitchens, anything that is presented without evidence can be dismissed without evidence, and there is no evidence that fluoridization is actually bad for you. Quite the opposite. So we'll leave it there, and in the future I will hopefully gather all those links I was talking about to the studies and the cohort studies to show that it's actually good for you.
Neither is lead, okay? People need to stop worrying about lead. There are compounds where lead is in, where it won't kill you, it's fine.
Yeah, it's in a minuscule
well, it's not even the minuscule amounts. Look, I mean, like an autism vaccine, when they had lead, they had a compound with lead in it that was extremely safe. Yeah. And even then, it was less lead than what was in a tuna sandwich. Like,
yeah, it's like mercury folate. Is it folate or folate? It's actually bonded, so it doesn't actually get absorbed by the body, but it provided a stable molecule to stop the vaccines from breaking down, so they'd last longer. But all those particular dangerous, quote unquote, because they weren't actually dangerous, have actually been taken out of our vaccines now because of public pressure. And then when people complain, oh, formaldehyde's in vaccines, well, guess what? Your body naturally...
Yeah, your body actually metabolizes it as part of its normal system.
Uses it. It's part of the function of cells. Now, the amount of formaldehyde that was in the vaccines was less than the amount of formaldehyde that naturally occurs in your body. So when people say chemicals are dangerous, it's the use of the chemical and the level of the chemical.
Concentration and where.
Concentration, yeah.
So, for example, I mean, peroxide...
You are made of chemicals. Water is a chemical. That banana you eat is composed of chemicals. We are chemical beings. So chemicals aren't dangerous. It's use, type, and dosage.
Let's not start on radiation.
So, yes. And radiation. We all radiate, son.
Bananas have more radiation.
A house brick has radiation, but radiation is a vibration of your atoms, which then give off other atoms, which radiate away. The radiation you only really have to worry about is high levels of ionizing radiation.
Well, radiation is just the output of decay, generally.
Yeah. Ionizing radiation is a type of radiation which will actually knock electrons off your atoms in a body, which then can possibly cause or lead to changes in genetic structure, because the atom has a different molecule, therefore it becomes a different atom structure. So instead of an oxygen molecule, it can now become, I don't know, what happens when you knock an oxygen molecule off a particular atom? It will become another compound, so it can change.
You said vibrations. You said vibrations. You meant decay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
vibration is heat.
Ionizing radiation is the only one you've got to worry about. Most things in your everyday life, you are not going to encounter ionizing radiation. It is not in your microwave. It is not in your Wi-Fi. It's not in your house brick. So careful of catchphrases. Catchphrases are more deadly than what they're actually talking about.
There is radiation, but the type of radiation is very, it's not highly penetrating.
The only one you've got to worry about is the ionizing, the one that's actually going to strip electrons, knock electrons or protons or other particles out of the
alpha source is not very dangerous. Beta source is alpha source is dangerous if ingested. Beta source and gamma source radiation, gamma being one of the worst. Those are the dangerous
non-ionizing radiation, like your Wi-Fi, not dangerous. Non-ionizing radiation at low levels out of your microwave behind a microwave door is safe. High levels could possibly cause damage, but you would have to stick your head right into the microwave and leave it there for 5 or 6 hours to actually cause a problem.
I wouldn't want to stick my head. I think you would die of heat.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. You would die of heat before you die of radiation.
The ionizing effect of it is, well, very extremely low. And with the door closed, even the regular radiation is extremely low. No, I wouldn't stick my face up against the microwave for more than a few minutes at a time. Not a good idea, but you're not going to kill yourself. You're not going to create any diseases in yourself. So, yeah, quite safe. So, once again, once we get back to chemicals, remember the word chemical is not a scary word, because you yourself are composed of chemicals, atoms, chemicals, and yes, you radiate. Okay.
We're gonna move on to I've got 2 more. I'll remove the Illuminati symbol from the stream. There's two. Both very important, but we'll start off with the one that's probably got the most. I don't know if it's more important, but it's extremely interesting, which is the what is it called? Truvada, I believe. Let's have a look. It is Truvada, HIV prevention drug. They recently did extra tests on it.
Yes.
And over a group of 600 individuals, none of them received HIV. These were high-risk individuals. That doesn't mean the drug is 100%. It's about a 92% success rate. So if you take it regularly, this is not necessarily good. You have about a 92% lowered risk. So you've got about an 8% chance comparatively to what you normally would have if you didn't take the drug.
That's a significant amount.
Obviously,
even a lot of common taken drugs for other conditions would not have such a success rate.
I mean, obviously, if the person themselves that has that disease is taking antiretrovirals, their viral load will be very low as well, so it will decrease it a lot. The problem is that I don't know that they were talking about this. It's a really good case study. It's really interesting. But the issue being that I don't see people taking a medication every day just so that they have a lower risk. And the other two things being that some people are going to be stupid and they're going to assume this gives them protection from it. And then there's going to be other people that are going to assume, oh, well, I'm taking this, I don't have to wear condoms anymore. Or something.
No, you should still wear, take protective measures, be tested regularly. Yes, it's not just catching HIV. You have to worry out there are other the more classic sexually transmitted
the other one. Classics,
which still do cause problems.
The classics.
Things like syphilis, and you should get yourself tested because it does cause brain damage.
Yes, the spirochetes cause brain damage.
Yes, it causes brain damage. Actually, physically causes holes in your brain. It will send you mad, as to use the classic term. It will cause severe mental illness and irreversible brain damage. So, yes, protect yourself. If you don't know the person you're having sex with, use protection.
Thankfully,
and if you do and you haven't known them for long, still use protection.
Yeah. But I think it's
and engage in safe sex practices. Yes. That's always, no matter how better or how good these drugs are getting, which I'm glad they are, still engage in safe sex practices.
The most important thing about this is not, like I said, I don't think it's going to have much impact on the way that people live their lives. I don't think a lot of people are going to take it up. But it's interesting in the fact that it shows us a mechanism by which we might be able to fight the virus. And so
which can lead to possibly a cure. We're not at a cure. We're at the stage we're able to halt the progression. Yeah. We can't stop it.
People won't. If you get HIV now, you won't die. You won't die.
Well, you won't necessarily die from HIV.
There's a very low rate.
There's a lower rate. Some will still die.
Yeah.
You have to realise that there is still a risk that you will die from HIV.
Yeah. But generally,
it is a smaller risk now, though. But people are surviving. That was the little dirty secret of the 80s, where they weren't telling that there were people who were surviving. They didn't want to tell people that because they didn't want to encourage people to continue to in unsafe sex practices. But it is a highly survivable nowadays. Yeah. Highly survivable.
If you survive a certain period of time without developing into the AIDS part, you're pretty likely to just live a normal life as long as you're taking the medications regularly.
You may have a few years cut short in your life, but it's going to be a lot longer than it used to.
There's actually been. I was looking into the research of this a while ago, and actually the current stand on it is that there shouldn't be any shortening of lifespan if you're taking the medications regularly. Because the viral load goes so far down that the actual influence... I mean, I would assume that some people would have some years cut off of their life, but they're talking from mainly like the average is that there's not really that much of an impact.
On the average, there are people definitely not going to be affected by it. They're few and far between. So, the survivability, it's like with some cancers now, they're actually much more survivable than they used to be. I mean, we're talking people that are living 20, 30 years with having a particular cancer with the right treatment. So, the survivability rate is definitely way up. Yeah, you're looking up from the 80s to 90, 95% survivability, which is far better than it used to be when you were looking at 1 to 2% with the HIV virus. But still, safe sex practices.
Yes.
It's not on. It's not on. Just remember that, folks.
No, but I mean, it's. I mean, I see it more
Either
like
that or have a good warm cup of tea and stay at home. Yes.
yeah. I see that more like the hepatitis C kind of thing, like where for a long time some people were capable of being cured, and then it's as time went on, the drugs got better and better, and more people are capable of being cured. Some people still aren't, but it's about something like it's very rare. Like if you get hepatitis C and you go for the treatment, it's a few months. It's a lot of time.
There's a couple of drugs out there now. There's not just one, which makes it better. But
it's
then
something like
also
98% cure rate or something.
Around the 80%.
Is it 80? Is it? It's high. It's very high.
I'd have to check. The stats keep changing daily, so I'd have to go back from the last study I looked at, which was a while ago. So yeah, it was around the 80% mark. But now there's also Hep D you have to worry about. So, and the Hep C. So there's Hep C plus. So it has a slight variation.
Is it more objective?
Yes, viruses mutate. That's the whole thing. That's why they survive, because they do mutate. They incorporate other bits of DNA. They add DNA, which helps them evade detection, and it can also cause more damage when they mutate. So you still have to practice safe sex and safe drug usage practices. That will never change. Even in the next 50 years, that's not going to change. But what it means is if you do contract one of these diseases, your chances of survival nowadays are a lot higher. And you can thank modern medicine. So we've gone from the average age of in the 17th century of 47 to an average age now of 87. So as science progresses, our lifespans and our quality of life progresses.
Admittedly, though, that was skewed heavily by infant mortality. So if you live to a certain year, you're pretty much guaranteed to live into your
but your average age was only 47.
Yeah.
Would off fairly quickly, but now with better medicines, you're living well past that. You're living up to 87. So modern medicine has improved your quality of life. Also, modern medical practices and hygiene, as well as antibiotics. These are the things that have been able to live us longer and healthier lifestyle. So, but just remember also that dying is a natural part of the life cycle. So, and so is disease.
To die, motherfucker.
So is disease. We never, because we have a closed, complicated system. The more complicated it is, the more chances there are for things to go wrong. So disease is always going to be a part of life. More so for some people, less so for others. That's the genetic lottery.
There's no objective morality, and when you die, you're gone forever. Deal with it, and then the void is waiting, eternity.
Deal with it. Deal with the void in whatever fashion you feel.
Start your existential crisis now. Later on, you have time.
Yes, if you're an atheist or a religious person, yes, we all die in the end.
All right. So next one is Alzheimer's disease. Has been this is progressive dementia. It's part of similar to progressive dementia. So Alzheimer's in this case, disease has been reversed in rats, based on it's been based. Funnily enough, people that have Alzheimer's are very disconnected from reality. Yet the medication that they use starts with IRL. So in real life. Anyway, the drug that they're using, I don't know the full.
Okay, reverse in rats. Yes, it would be interesting to see the humans trials to actually see if it works. The problem is once media and the populace says, "Oh, this works in rats, it must work in people." It is not always the case.
Yeah, it's
the rats.
It's not.
The rats they'll move on to more close models, simian models, so using monkeys to test. But even then, just because it works in rats does not mean it's going to work in people.
The rats.
Basically, what the rats do as a test model is a way to see if they are on the right path.
Yes.
It's a pointer. It does not mean they've discovered the cure. It just means they're on the right direction.
They do have better. We do have better better test subjects than what we did before, because obviously we do genetic modification to have them more closely represent us. And it's promising because the mechanism by which they're using in the rats exists within the humans, but we don't know whether or not it's more complex than that. Whether or not something is capable of being transported, whether or not the molecule is capable of actually being diffused
in
through
vitro
cells.
or in a rat. Yeah.
Yep, but it's IRL 1620, and its action is working on endothelin B receptors on the cells. So that's interesting to see whether or not this kind of research will be able to move over to people.
Something with promise.
Yes. I mean, we were talking about the ultrasonic blood-brain barrier opening before, because a lot of the issue is that we can do things with the plaques, but we can't get the plaques to actually be removed from that system. So they're trying to do things...
Ultrasonics. There's also other drugs that dissolve the plaques, but you still get the issue of the plaques reoccurring. And then what do you do about the damage? How do you get the holes actually left behind to grow back to? How do you get and also there's also genetic damage which occurs to the ganglions. How do you get that repaired? So that's another issue. But yeah, it's good to see that they are showing promise in a possible new path of drugs, or in this case, this particular drug, and showing results in rats. It's a good pointer. It's when we get to the simian studies and then later on the human studies, we'll see whether we're actually going to get some results. So no, don't yet have a cure, folks, but we're a step closer.
Yeah, I mean it's getting promising. There's a lot of research. The thing is that I agree with kind of more of the problem with these kind of things is because of our understanding of, you know, the mental model, whether or not things like the connectome in regards to each individual's capacity for cognition, your epigenetic factors, your genetic factors, the macroscopic structure of the brain. We don't have a very good model of all of this together, so therefore I kind of more have an anarchist view of the way that it should go forwards. The progression of science in this field at this current moment should be pretty much whatever the hell we want to focus on, because it's not something we can come at a very... It's not like a lot of the body where we have a good understanding of the mechanisms.
We have a
lot of data.
Overview, a good overview. It's a good way of... If you think of the brain as a city and each region as a suburb, we can get down to the point where we can look at the suburbs and we can see the roads, but we can't see what's going on inside the house.
We have a reasonable understanding of some things.
We have an overview. I mean, we get down to the point we know how a neuron functions, but then we've discovered there are sub-processes which I just learned that pre-process, and they're built on the edge of the neurons. And so our resolution is improving, but we're not there yet.
The issue is that we have lots of
data. How it all works. Yeah, we need more data. Then we also need a good understanding of how that data fits together.
I agree that obviously more data is good, but I actually think we have enough data. It's just that we have levels of abstractions of models.
Yeah,
we don't have a good
resolution of that data. I mean,
we don't have a good model.
We have a fuzzy, blurry look at the brain at the moment,
and it's all from different perspectives. Like, okay, we know this is like somewhat the region of where something forms for this, because we've seen people that have had brain injuries.
One affects the other. I mean, we've only just recently discovered how the brain actually not only communicates electrochemically between each neuron synapses, but how it also communicates with photons. A flash of light is sent and then received across branches, so it communicates from one area of the brain to the other in sight photonically. So the brain is electrochemical photonic processing. So that's something new.
Do we actually know of this, or has this been... I've not read anything to this. Was this... Because I know that they've been doing genetic modification of rats for photonic...
Well, they're actually able to wipe memories from rats by actually focusing light on particular areas of neurons.
Is this a natural...
Yeah, they have seen photo processing in the brain. So
is this? Do they believe this is like? So this is a release. See, I haven't seen this. My current knowledge expands to synaptic. Like, so when you have your vesicles, you have the synaptic, the neurotransmitters, and the binding of the neurotransmitters, and then the removal of them.
Physorg.com is a good place as a jumping off point. We'll point to some recent studies. From there, you can then jump off to the abstracts from where the university's actually done those studies. So the abstracts are readily available. Also, Nature. Nature.com now has made all their articles free access to the public. So, and Nature being the premier science journal, with most new science stories coming out, Nature is 99% getting it right because they peer review their articles.
Yes,
so
they're actually quite good. Yeah.
Check out Nature.
Yep. I mean
Now
that. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry.
That would make sense. I mean, it would make sense because I mean the photons are derived, can come from the electromagnetic interactions.
Well, any time an electron hits another electron, you create a photon. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the absorption and the emission of a photon. Like I was saying before about evolutionary circuitry, it would seem that through nature, through this brute force, it would be beneficial to have a quick method of transmission of data, and maybe perhaps, obviously, seeing that electricity and electromagnetism is in relation to the axon, going down the axon, there would be some.
I don't know how magnetic fields actually very little influence in the brain because there would be some propagation where it is in the size. Well, very little.
I'm not talking about electromagnetism. I'm talking that because it's part of that structure and because there's some emission, there may be emissions of photons and absorption of photons.
Electromagnetic forces. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think it needs more view into it. I don't know whether or not. I mean, obviously, it would be very beneficial because I would assume, admittedly, the gaps are very small for synaptic firing, extremely tiny. So the chemical reaction is extremely quick. But I would assume that it would be more beneficial to have a photonic emission and absorption.
If you want to, well, communicating between different clumps of neurons, it would be beneficial.
Yeah, perhaps there might be some mix of the two going on, and that's the reason why. I would assume it'd be more complex than necessarily maybe just synaptic firing in regards to that there may not just be just neurotransmitters, and if there are neurotransmitters, there might be other. I mean, obviously there'd be other factors to involve that we don't understand yet. We don't have good enough understanding, I think, to be able to assume that it's just the neurotransmitters we know of. I mean, obviously we have good understanding to know that they are definitely the case for this, but I would assume there would be other mechanisms behind the scene that we don't know about.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So how long are we going to go on for? We're reaching about.
I think we've probably reached towards the end.
Hour and 10 minutes. Yeah. We covered a lot of random things. We kind of went on about them. What we'll do is we'll wrap it up for today, and we'll format the show. Now we've got this different method of transmitting it and having a proper setup comparatively, because Hangouts was goddamn awful.
It was.
I mean,
so
there's still some.
To the people who actually watched our first, to all 10 of you that actually watched our first video, we thank you. And by the way, if you do have any criticisms, any comments or suggestions, do put them in the comment section. We will look at the comment section, and just to note that we will moderate the section, so hateful, unhelpful and name calling will be removed. Useful comments that may disagree with us won't be removed,
and anything that's true. So if you say that Andrew's old, then it's okay.
Yes, it's true,
or that I look weird, it's okay.
No. So helpful comments, criticisms don't necessarily agree with us. They are the sort of things we're looking for.
Yep.
Ones that do agree with us, things we're looking for as well. So or if you've got anything to add, something that expands upon or improve people's knowledge, and you have links to proper studies or findings, and Nature News is not one of them. Nature is a good place you can link to where you find articles and suggestions. That would be great. So. Yep.
Alrighty, so we'll close it up for today. I'll put we'll collect the links and I'll put them up in the video afterwards. So we're all done.
Thank you to Jordan, the floating head, because that's all we can see there.
Well, that's all you can see. The other camera, they can see more. All right.
And to me, Andrew, and this has been Anything and Everything, your podcast for science and philosophy. And goodbye.
Goodbye.